Welcome to the podcast We Are Made for More with Megan Alexander. In this podcast, we'll strive to inspire people around the world to become the best version of themselves by featuring guests with experiences and mindsets that demonstrate that we are all made for more.
Prepare to meet the dynamo that is Laurie Condon, a sales director, personal trainer, author, and an inspiring woman who is living proof that we can wear multiple hats and excel in all. Get the scoop on Laurie's foray into the world of writing as she shares details about her latest novel, There's No Place Like Home. Laurie's knack for storytelling is evident as she takes us through her personal struggles and triumphs, offering a masterclass in resilience and positivity.
Hello and welcome to We Are Made for More. I am your host, Megan Alexander, and this is my podcast. So today I am with another guest number 3 on this very new podcast of mine. And tonight I want to welcome a friend, Laurie Condon. Hi, Laurie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm excited too.
So I'm going to kick off tonight and share a little bit about Laurie so that you can know a little bit about her and what we're going to talk about tonight. So Laurie is a director of sales at a global media company. She lives on Long Island with her son, Luke, who is 18, and her husband. She's a personal trainer. Laurie is an affiliate for Sakara for Life. She has written 3 books, and one of which was just released this month,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's a tidbit, right? That's a little bit, but as I even just say those things, and as I was kind of reading your bio, and we're friends, but I still ask everybody for a bio, but as I was reading it, it just made me realize all of the hats we wear in life.
There's a lot of them for sure. Hard to juggle.
Hard to juggle.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's funny, I think back to when I first met you, and we were on Long Island. We live on Long Island, and we were at a baseball facility.
And I was selling something else.
You were. That's exactly where I was going with this.
So yeah.
And I remember I was just sitting at the table, and our sons didn't play in the same team, right? At that time,
is
they were
correct.
just
Yeah.
in like the same training facility, and you were, just friendly, and we just started chatting. And I remember one thing led to another, and you told me about.
I don't even know how it came up.
Yeah,
but,
it's because with you, it just does. It just comes up so naturally.
Thank you.
And at the time, you were, I think it was skincare.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for 3 years, and then obviously, I just had too many things on my plate, and I really thought hard. What do I like doing the most? And that was writing and definitely exercise.
Writing and exercise. Okay, we're definitely going to get into that.
Yeah.
I've got my notes here because
Okay.
there's a lot of fun things to talk about. But I could say, where do you want to start? But where I'd love to start is a little bit about. Tell us about your director of sales global company. I'd love to hear a little bit about that because
Sure.
to understand the whole picture, you're a career woman.
Yeah.
First.
So it's a funny story. I had applied for a job at CMP Media, which back in the day, so I've been with the company 29 years. It was
Wow.
one of the top 100 companies to work for on Long Island. So I was determined that I was going to work there.
Wow.
And I had 11 interviews. They did not want me. And I really was young and I did not have any skills. But I guess at some point I wore them down.
Oh, wow. I love the word determined right there, first
Yeah.
of all. That's clear with you.
So I took a job and and it evolved. At the time, there was no internet, which really makes me feel old.
I can relate. I think we're the same
Yeah,
age.
right? And so I started laying out a magazine that was a thick 250-page magazine weekly. And I worked there doing that job for 3 years. And the publisher said, I think you'd be really good at sales. And I wanted nothing to do with it.
Okay.
And the woman who I'd be working for was going out on maternity leave. So she's like, just take 3 months try the job, and if you don't like it, you can have your old job back.
Okay.
And I never looked back. So I went right into sales, like
Wow.
having no experience and just going for it.
Just going for it. And that was right away? That was when you first got there?
Well, so I
how
was
far
3
in?
years in
3 years in.
Yeah, I did the print layout.
Okay. 3 years for that. And then it was, okay, give this a try. And you've been doing it ever since.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it went from selling print, which was all they had, to now I sell people, concierge services, web advertising, events,
Wow.
people.
Wow, that's a
can sell
lot.
people,
You can
yeah.
sell people. How do you do that? How
I'll
do you
tell
s-
you about that later. It's
Okay.
called, yeah,
Okay.
it's a long
long story.
story.
All right.
Yeah.
But you stayed there.
Yes.
So, do you like sales? If someone had to ask you that question, I guess I'm asking you that question.
I think I do. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I know that I like sales, but when I get passionate about something, I just find it me sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I sell good things,
Yeah.
which is I would never sell anything that I don't believe in.
Right.
There's definitely hard sides to it. And,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, when you help someone grow their business or whatever it is I'm selling,
Okay.
helping them get healthier.
Okay. I'd love to talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
too. You're doing two parts in that kind of arena.
Yes. So I sell, it's called Sakara Life,
Mm-hmm.
and that is plant-based meal delivery.
Right.
And of course, I have a story as to how I got into
love
that
to hear it.
too.
Okay.
A very close friend of mine, her boss gifted her a month of this food, and it's not cheap.
Okay.
And she said, "Can you?" Because I cook a lot, so she was asking me, "Can you figure out how to make these recipes?" And I took some of the things home. I took screenshots of what they were and the ingredients, and I tried, and I'm like, no, I can't. So then, unfortunately or fortunately, I tried the food, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, they were not as huge as they are now, and I literally used to write articles for their magazine and get paid in food.
Wow.
And they've grown so big that now I'm a customer.
Okay.
And I'm an affiliate. But
So
yeah.
was that something they offered at the
Yes.
time, or did you? Okay.
Oh, no,
About
no.
like I'll write for you if you do this, or did you?
I wanted
how'd you
to
make that happen?
write.
Okay.
I have always loved to write. Usually it's been fitness articles. That's how it started. And I had been doing it since I was a trainer. You know, I reached out to a lot of publications, and then I just offered, and they said, "Can we pay you in food?" I'm like, "I would love that."
That's
So-
brilliant.
Yeah, it was really a good recipe. And I've kind of done that my entire life. I find something, I get passionate about it, and I turn it into a business, which is just how my mind works. I don't know why.
Well, it sounds like it comes naturally to you.
It does. I don't, yeah.
Meanwhile, there's so many people out there that want to start a business and they're trying to figure out how to do it. How do I get started? Do you have any thoughts, or what works for you?
Well, so to be honest, I don't think I've done things the right way. They have been the right way for me, but like even with the book publishing,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't map out what I was going to write about. I didn't have like an outline. I didn't consult anyone. I just wrote. And that's kind of how I do most things. It's trial and error. I just go for it.
Okay.
It's kind of how I work. And sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it really just takes off. And I felt very blessed. I got published pretty quickly for the first one.
So, okay, I know we're all over the place.
Yeah.
We'll weave and keep coming back to things because I
Yeah.
think it's a story that weaves obviously throughout. Let's talk a little bit about the three books. One of them I've read, I want to say right now that I read the second book that came out, but tell us the titles of all three.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
So the first one was called Keeping Fit on the Run.
Okay.
And I wrote that because as a salesperson, well, I guess I have to backtrack and say I had an eating disorder for the majority of my adolescence and into my 20s,
Okay.
probably ending around 30. And one of the things with sales is you travel.
Mm-hmm.
So to make myself feel better, I needed a game plan as to how I was going to work out and eat healthy while I was traveling.
Right.
So I came up with a book called Keeping Fit on the Run, and it was a spiral-bound book that you could keep it open, so it would stay open so you could look at the exercises.
Okay.
It had a meal plan for how to order in restaurants and what to eat when you were in a hotel, and it had a hotel room workout. So, like I said, I did it for myself,
Right.
to get myself through the anxiety, and then I turned it into a thing.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. So
How did that do?
So the company that I worked for bought them all. So at the time, that was self-published. I printed 500 because it was $9,000 back then to print 500 books, and I was in my 20s.
Wow.
So they bought them all, and they distributed them to the sales team. And then I didn't print anymore because I had some other stuff going on. But I was happy with that.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. You sold them all.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be happy with
no, it was
that?
good.
First run, and you did it.
Yeah.
But that's great. Like, you put your mind to it. How did you even think to get it printed? How did you research that part of it?
Yeah, I guess there was no internet.
Yeah.
Gee, I don't really remember exactly.
But you're obviously resourceful. Like,
Yeah.
you just figured it out.
Actually, I did. I had known some professionals who had helped me get certified, so you have to go through courses. And I think I consulted with them. And then I had an editor who had been published. So I'm sure I used, I'll use the network
Right.
that I've created.
That's wonderful.
But equally, if someone asks me for help, I'm happy to share the resources. So I think that's how you have to be. You have to propel each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is about propelling each other. And that's one of the reasons I started this podcast to begin with, is really about inspiring people to be the best versions of themselves. And that might mean something different to each person that hears me say that.
Yeah.
It does, for some people it could be how they dress. For some people it could be how they carry themselves. For some people it could be, I was made for more. And in this life, I want to accomplish the things I came here to do.
Yeah.
Whatever level people think that is for them. But it is about inspiration. And that's why I feel each guest that I want to bring on is everyone has a story.
Absolutely.
And it's about sharing these stories with others and with each other. I think that, like you just said, helps propel people and get people to learn what it is they're looking for. And hopefully different stories will resonate with people. So anyway, let's weave a little bit into the second book.
Yes. Okay.
This one, I like I said, I read. Tell us about this.
That's called Everything is a Big Deal Until It's Not.
What a clever title, though, first of all, I want to say. Very
you.
captivating title.
And I'll tell you how that happened.
Let's go.
I called my sister and I said, I'm working on a book. And she's said, well, what's it about? And I said, well, you know how everything's a big deal and then it's not? She's like, there's the title. So that's really how that came about. It was not a well thought out plan. But I had, I started a book club. And it's a funny story. I was invited to a book club and I was kicked out of the book club before it even started. And I was apparently very competitive and angry. So
what?
Yeah, I'm like, what do you mean I'm not invited? And I came home and I was like, this is worse than being kicked out of a sorority. So I was, ruminating over it. And I'm like, I'm starting my own book club and it's going to be better than that book club. And I, in my mind, I'm like, what would make it better? And I thought, let me call up an author and see how much to get them to come to my house. The first author I reached out to was Jane Green, and she said, I'm not coming to your house. But she did say, I will Skype in.
That's pretty gutsy of you to just reach out to an author and say, hey, would you come to my book? I mean, it is.
At the time, it didn't seem that big of a deal, but yeah.
Now looking back.
Yeah, I do a lot of those things. And then in retrospect, I'm like, why would I do that?
So she said, I'll Skype in.
So she said, I will Skype in. So I bought sushi and we had, wine and it was all set up. I had a whole room set up and people came and we Skyped and it was a fantastic event. I felt so elated and excited because I always have loved to read and she's one of my favorite authors, and to have her in my den,
It's
was
incredible.
a big deal.
Yeah.
So then I started reaching out to other authors and it became a monthly thing. So then right after Jane Green was, I think, Ellen Hildebrand, who's another big deal.
Okay.
Who agreed to, she said, this is my first Skype.
Wow.
And it kept going and going. And eventually, for some odd reason, it started becoming live visits from authors. So I've had Kristen Higgins to my house, Sally Hepworth.
Wow.
Sally Hepworth is the reason that I wrote the first book.
Okay.
Sorry, the first book that was not self-published.
Right.
Okay, so what happened was she had asked me, I had mentioned to her, I started writing a book in college. It was called Don't Waste My Eggs. and each egg was a boyfriend. And so there was the hard-boiled egg, the rotten egg, and I had like a great storyline, but I think I had written it on paper because there was no computer. Or maybe I did and whatever. I couldn't find it. And so much time had gone by, I didn't even remember the story. So I said, she said, you should write that. That's a great title. I'm like, what if you write it and dedicate it to me? And she said, that's not happening.
But I love how you just ask people. You just go with it. Okay, go ahead.
And then she said, what's on your mind? And really what I was so preoccupied with was turning 50. I was just freaked out that all this time had gone by, and I was turning 50. And that's what I wanted to write about, because no one was talking about it, even though my friends were my peers, were turning 52. And all these things were happening to my body. And I was starting to feel like, oh no, I'm out of my prime.
Yeah.
And so then I looked back and I thought about how everything is scary once you're starting it, right? So becoming an adolescent, going into high school, getting your first boyfriend, getting your first job, getting married, having a kid.
Yes.
And that became the thinking. And then for me, what was paramount was turning 50.
Okay.
So that's how that book evolved. And then I wrote it, and then it was no big deal.
And then it was no big deal. But I actually want to talk about that book for a moment because it's funny. I got to tell you a story. I'm in a book club, and
would you like me to come in? I'm free.
There you go. There you go. I love it. I love it. See, there you go. And there you go again. I'm noticing this theme about you. You're not afraid to ask. You're not afraid to ask. And I want to point that out right now, because you never know where these conversations are going to go. But that is absolutely a theme with you. And I think that's, if you didn't already know this, that's a key for you.
And I don't even realize I'm doing it. If you know,
I know you don't.
I'm just, why wouldn't I?
But why not?
That's how I feel. Like, why wouldn't I?
But I think that, again, for a lot of people out there listening, sometimes people are held back by, oh my gosh, what if they said no? Or what if I get turned down? So good for you. But I'm calling out that theme because, you just do it naturally. It's a good one. So, but I do want to tell you, so I am in a book club and a bunch of wonderful ladies from my neighborhood. But I don't read a lot of the books. I don't read a lot of books. Everyone has their different thing in life of what they do. I do read some books, don't get me wrong. But to just randomly pick a book and read it is not my thing, let's say, right? For some people, it's listening to podcasts. For some people, it's watching movies or TV series or what have you. But anyway, this book I read, and that's why I even bring that up, because it was a page turner. It was, and it was just, I couldn't put it down. So I want to start by saying that if anyone hasn't read this book yet, you should pick it up. But one theme in it that you did talk about was perimenopause.
Yes.
And you just, talked about turning 50 and that whole thing. And I want to just say how brave that was to write about that, because I think we're seeing a lot more of that now. But this was a couple of years ago. Was it 3 years ago when it came out? I'm trying to remember exactly.
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was hard to write about, but the reason I wrote about it is because I wanted answers and I wanted to have those discussions. So I felt like if I put it out there, maybe I could have the dialogues. And let me tell you, I had a lot of conversations with women who had worse experiences than I did, and still just trying to find a way to navigate through it and not, I don't want to waste my life worrying about what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I was feeling. And I still, believe me, there's days that I wake up, I'm like, oh my God, more wrinkles or whatever. And then there's other days when I wake up and think about, wow, I'm so lucky that I can go down and ride my bike. Or I'm so lucky that I have this great family. And I always try to turn my negative thoughts to something positive, because we have so much to be grateful for.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you hear different quotes or sayings, and one of them is about how if you think you have problems, would you trade them with somebody else's? And really, you look at your own, right? And it's but it's true. You kind of reflect, and we all go through tough times. There's no doubt about it. We've all been through tragedies, and if you haven't, hate to say it, you will. It's life. But embrace, I guess, what we have and be grateful first.
I feel like if you pay it forward. That's how I feel good. I know you're like that too, but when I'm feeling that negative or self-pity part, I'm like, who can I help or what can I do to get out of my own head? Because we spend a lot of time self-absorbed, kind of thinking about our own things. And when you step out of your own way and try to help someone else, it makes you feel better, makes them feel better.
Thank you for bringing up that reminder right now. You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm very into self-help, self-development type of things. That's a big part of my life, and I'm passionate about learning. But you're right. A lot of people that are talking in that space talk a lot about helping others and how that really helps you help yourself.
It does. My
Right?
mom was like that, and I always saw her, you know, and it was effortless. She wasn't doing it for attention. She didn't have social media to post out like, I just gave blah 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 to this charity. She did it because she really cared about making a difference in the world.
And what did that do for you to see her?
I mean, I was
doing
always that was what I was always around, so it made me aspire to be like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a great role model to have.
definitely. I was very blessed.
For sure. And I think it was Mr. Rogers that said, look for the helpers, you know,
Yeah.
and look for those people in life because they're inspiring. So anyway, little tangent there, but
Yeah.
I like that one. So we were talking about the book, but I was saying how brave it was that you talked about perimenopause at the time. I thought, because
Yes.
it was my first time reading something like that. Like we just said, it was
Yeah.
a few years ago, and really enlightening for you to be so authentic about what you were going through in life. And I think, like I was saying, now we're starting to see a lot more of that. Like Oprah's been talking about it. Brooke Shields.
I think Naomi Watts. Yeah,
Yeah,
there are a
Naomi
lot.
Watts.
Yeah.
And Maria Shriver. I mean, so these are some of the names but that's recent, like within the past 6 months. And I'm thinking, wow,
'cause of me.
Laurie did it first. I'm right there with you. Laurie did it first. So good for you though, for sharing and shedding a light on what people need to hear about.
Well, because you have to know that everyone's going through it.
Right.
And I was like, why are we ashamed of what happens to can't we help each other? And I feel like so many times when you just talk to a friend or you discuss something and it validates your feelings and then you're like, you know what, this is just what happened. So it kind of, I needed to own it so that I could stop worrying about it.
Yeah. Good for you. Well, it was great. And then that
Thank
leads
you.
us to the most recent novel, right?
Yes.
What you call it, a novel. And
Yes.
Billy, my technician here, who's also my husband, must have an asset he could put up there for us.
Oh.
And the name of the book is?
There's No Place Like Home. And
Tell us about it.
So there is a situation that happened, which I'll talk a little bit about, that I embellished upon. But my husband, for real,
Okay.
was adopted
Okay.
and thought he would do some research into his biological family. And so we thought, oh, maybe he'll find a half sibling. He'll find out he has eczema or something. And it turned out to be a whole lot different. There was a medical condition. There was a lot of kids, a lot of baby mamas. And
Wow.
it was such an interesting story. I'm like, oh my God, no one would believe this.
Right.
And as it evolved, there is, I don't want to ruin it, but
Okay.
there's a disease that comes up that I knew nothing about. I hadn't heard of it. And I thought, I want to bring some attention to this.
Okay.
Because we did meet one of his sisters who's since passed of the disease.
Ah, wow.
And so the book is dedicated to her.
That's nice. That's lovely.
And it was just such a fascinating story. I wanted her to live on because we really loved her. Like we only knew her for a year, but I wanted to bring attention to it and have something that would, because he, didn't have a family, and then he found this family, and then to have that happen. So it was kind of that, and then it was such a great story that I had to turn it into something.
So is the whole book based on a true story, or do you embellish a little bit? Okay.
So just in case for anyone who reads it, I am not addicted to drugs, nor do I sell them.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of made up stuff that I just took from stories I've heard and et cetera. And actually I took it from my full-time job, the sales job. I interviewed someone who, was talking about how she was not diagnosed with ADHD until she was in college, and she was struggling through school, and she became at a very young age a CMO in a technology company
Oh.
after she was diagnosed and started taking Adderall. So I was fascinated by the story. I started running on the treadmill, and I'm like, oh my God, there's where I'm going to take my other character. So that's how that came about.
Okay. So just listening to life and weaving
Yeah.
things in.
Yep.
So it's been out for what, a couple of weeks?
July 13th.
So just about a month.
Yeah.
How's it going so far? Tell everybody about this process.
Yeah. It is, as an unknown author, it is hard to get the word out there. Because of the book club that I told you about, I was blessed and privileged to meet Adriana Trigiani, and I just was on her Facebook Live.
That's wonderful.
So she only has 108,000 followers.
That's
so I'm hoping,
Good for her.
I'm hoping that will help, and it's getting really good reviews, so I'm hopeful.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank
first
you.
of all, it's really neat. And I remember when you were putting out your second book, you told me a little bit about the process of getting an editor and all of that kind of thing. Could you share a little bit about
Sure.
what, for people again out there that may want to write a book or they've been dying to do it?
So
would you
again,
recommend it?
It's really hard. So the writing piece for me was not the hard part. The editing is kind of brutal.
Okay.
Because you've already put down all the things that you think and you want it to be, and then someone goes through and then red lines all of it. And some of it can be like, that's funny. So it's not all the red lines are bad, but to go back and rewrite for me was very challenging.
Okay.
And I also, I race through things. Like I like to get
Let's
it done.
get it done. That's
right?
I can relate.
So you have to be patient and rewrite, and it's a process. So that part was very difficult. I used the book club again. I found an editor through Sally's editor, Sally Hepworth's editor. So I don't know if I told you this, but she did a book club with me. She lived in Australia. So she Skyped in her first book when she was not known at all. Now she's got like 10 New York Times bestsellers, and she did a huge book tour, came to New York, and when she was in town, I said, come over. And she said, I can't come over. I'm like, no, you're coming over. And she came with her husband.
Seriously?
To my house. My husband sat with her husband they watched a basketball game, and she came to my house.
See, there it is again.
Yes.
You have this power of persuasion. That's what I'm going to say about you, Laurie.
Well, I
power
was
of persuasion.
her first book club.
Yeah. You're like, hey, let's go.
So anyway, so her editor had referred me to my editor that I used for both books. And this third book, so the last one that just came out, I had two editors. I had a content editor and I had a grammatical editor. And it took a month to rewrite.
What if you didn't agree with their suggestions? Did you still have to do it? It was
so
strongly
some of it,
suggested.
I didn't change all of the suggestions, but most of them were good.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, if something needed more character development, I mean, they know what they're doing. I hired some good people, and yes.
And
so
then
I went with most of them.
So you have an editor and then it's a publisher. That's different?
So most people get an agent. So what happens is after you write or you have maybe half of a book written, you have to send out query letters to find an agent. So I gave myself a year. I did not want to self-publish because I had done it before. It's very expensive. And then every time someone orders a book, you have to print it. Okay. Right? So I either would have to assume I would make a certain number of sales and then mail them out myself, or print it's just, you can't do it. Yeah. So I gave myself a year, and on April 1st, I got 2 offers to get published. So I started January 1st and April Fool's Day. I don't know what that means.
It's funny.
The weird thing is it's a lot. Every day I sent an email to a new agent. I got a lot of rejections, but still in the course of 4 months, that's not a very long time.
If you had to give it a number, do you remember like how many rejections you got?
Probably about 40.
Wow.
Yeah. But then a publisher had responded, and again, it was not Simon & Schuster. It was not like a publisher I had heard of. I'm like, Black Rose Writing. Is this real? I didn't know. I had no experience. So my sister-in-law and my brother have both published books, and they told me to join the Authors Guild.
Okay.
So they reviewed the contract. So you can use a lawyer from the Authors Guild to review, and I didn't have to pay. I joined the Authors Guild for $135.
There you
They
go.
reviewed my contract for free.
Perfect.
Yeah. So they went over it and they said, this is a great contract.
Okay.
And I ran with it.
For $135, I'd
Yeah.
underwrite that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's
So
how
good
that
for you.
happens.
Good for you.
Yeah, but the normal process is to get an agent. I don't have one.
Okay. Do you want one? Do you need one, or you feel
No,
like you
I don't want one because then you have to share. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a lot of profits until you become a bestseller.
Which hopefully,
Yes.
that's where this is headed. Let's
I
go.
hope so.
Let's put the word
Yes,
out,
let's
everybody.
do it.
Like and share, please. I just heard recently that, again, you could fact check me. I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but I did hear recently, like, the power of how Facebook started, and apparently Mark Zuckerberg came to the table. Again, you could fact check this, but he was so confident in its success because he said, oh, we have this 1.4 multiplier. And somebody had said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, if we already have data that says that everyone's telling 1.4 people about Facebook, and it's a sure thing. So again, I may not be articulating this perfectly, but
Well,
if
it's
you
like that
do the math,
commercial. Remember that shampoo commercial?
Yeah.
If they told two friends, and
Yes.
and so on, and
that's
so
right.
on.
So if that's the multiplier, let's everybody out there,
Makes
please
sense.
tell 1.4 people or
Please.
more. But anyway, I wish you well on
Thank
this success. So you just mentioned you were on a Facebook Live, and she has
Yes.
over 100,000 followers. So that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, it was so exciting.
You're doing this podcast now.
Yeah.
Which we don't have as many followers, but I'd love
Yeah.
some more. So
Yeah.
please tell everybody. But then you said you have another one coming up, I think,
Yeah,
right?
it's called the Clip Out. So that's through the Peloton community.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So
Tell me about that, because you, I know, are Miss Pelotoner. Let's
Yes.
talk about your fitness
yeah,
side
yeah.
of your life.
So I'm up to about 3,100 rides.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But
And
you're
I'm
very
still
consistent.
sitting in the same spot.
Don't you do the same days a week every single week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Tell us
So
about that. How did you get so regimented?
I ride an hour on Monday. Tuesday, I run an hour.
Okay.
Wednesday, I ride an hour. Thursday, I ride half an hour, and then I do the elliptical for half an hour. And Friday, I ride an hour.
Goodness, Laurie. How do you do
And
that?
Sunday, I ride an hour and a half.
Wow.
How I'm really tired.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Okay.
how, yeah.
But what is it? Okay. Listen, I talked to a lot of people. I happen to know, I'm realizing now, I know a lot of personal trainers. And everyone talks about consistency. But help us understand, how do you stay consistent
It's not
with
optional to me.
Okay.
Like the way you brush your teeth.
Yeah.
The way the way you do certain things. Like it's not an option, because being eating disordered for a large part of my life, fitness is what got me better.
that? Okay.
It was a trade-off for me, which again, it's not always great to, you don't want to become exercise bulimic, which I am not, thankfully, but I could have overdone that too. I did overdo that for a while too. So
Okay.
I'm extreme.
You
I think
are.
You're figuring that
I
out.
definitely am. I'm sure our listeners
and
are hearing that.
And
but,
I found some balance, but I need to be consistent. It
Okay.
gives me peace.
That's great. Now, have you ever had moments of like an injury or a time where you had to take a break from it, or no?
Yes, I had foot surgery, and I went out and I bought a really stupid, I think it's called an ergometer, where you, right? So you turn I couldn't use my foot. So I
Okay,
was
so this
gonna
is with your
So
upper
I'm
body?
doing it for an hour, right? And it burned like 104 calories. I'm like, that's 4 croutons. I mean, it was so dumb, and I donated it to the veterans. So yes, that was hard. But to also see that I went through the foot surgery, I didn't work out for a month, and I was fine.
And you were fine.
So
That's
again,
right.
that's that process of learning to become comfortable. I plow right into them rather than avoiding them. I need to know I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're sharing this part of the story too, because that's reality as well for
Yep.
people that, it's so important for them to work out, and sometimes you get sidelined with something. But if you've been consistent or you stay consistent, you'll be
But the
fine.
one thing that I will say is that if you have a foot injury, you
Yeah.
can do weights.
Right. Upper
There
body.
are things that you can do. And again, so I was a runner for 40 years, and my
Really?
knees,
I didn't know that
I
part.
had
Okay.
something called piriformis syndrome, which is next to your sciatic nerve, and I also have ITB, which is iliotibial band syndrome,
Okay.
which are both from running.
Okay.
Women are more prone to it than men, but it is something. It's just an uneven stride, which I was like, how am I going to deal without running? And that's when I found the bike. So, there's always an alternative.
Right. There's an alternative. And, I've had some, as I get a little older myself, we were just talking about that, just the creeks that are coming in different parts. And someone suggested to me recently, get in a pool, walk in a pool, swimming.
Absolutely.
So I haven't done that yet, but that's, I just talk about exercise, different things that
walking,
you could do.
Just moving. We just are so sedentary. Like, it's just good to move.
Oh, it's so true. And it feels good to move.
And be out in fresh air.
Absolutely.
Right?
So we mentioned personal trainer. How much of that is part of your life?
I have 4 clients that I see before work.
Okay.
So I do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday.
All right. So one each day. Yeah. One each day. All right. And are these people you've had for a long time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they're grandfathered in because you've got a lot going on.
I don't.
So good for them.
I don't think I'm going to be taking anyone else on. But yeah.
Good for you. It's amazing. So, we've talked a lot about your story. What about your, tell us a little bit about your family, your son and your husband, and what you could share, where they're at in their life right now. I know, like Luke being 18, that's an exciting time.
It's really, it's hard. It's hard to let go, and it's hard to not be able to fix everything, as I'm sure you know, as being a mom.
I sure do.
So he is not outgoing. My husband is quite shy as well. And my son is more like my husband than myself, although we're all kind of anxious. And he's staying home for school, and part of me is so happy.
Really? Yeah.
I wanted him to go so badly. I wanted him to experience college and being away. But as it gets closer, I'm happy.
So what did he decide to do?
He's going to commute.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But at the same time, I want to make sure he has friends and social life and all the great things that come along with college. So it's hard. It's hard to let go.
I'm sure, but I'm sure those things will come too. And I can totally relate, as my son is looking at colleges right now. He's going to be a rising senior this year. So just starting that process here a year ahead of me. But I have some of those same fears going on. I can
oh my God, and
absolutely
the
understand that too, right? Right?
They
always say little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems.
And I really never understood that until the driving thing came about. And let me tell you, it's awful.
Yeah, how do you feel about it?
So he's really not a fan of driving.
Okay.
So part of me, I'm glad he's cautious, but it's frightening. First of all, being the teacher, that is not fun. I don't love teaching him to drive. I don't love being in the car with him. He's doing great now, but we've had 20 private lessons. We drive every day.
That's smart.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't love it.
I understand. And listen, I know we mentioned a couple times we're on Long Island, but for those of you that aren't on Long Island, it is a very busy area.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Some of our main roads that would be somewhere else in the country, they're packed like a highway or a freeway here.
And the easy thing would be for me to keep driving them because I can.
Yeah.
But I'm trying not to, I'm fighting myself because you got to let go.
You're absolutely right.
And I keep thinking like I was a lousy driver and I'm still here. So
yeah, we got to knock on wood, do a little praying. We could only do what we could do and just, teach them the best we can.
Lastly, I'll just tell you that my husband, I'm really proud of him because he was in finance for,
I know this story.
like 30 years.
Yes.
And then COVID hit and he said, I'm not doing anything that's fulfilling me.
I love this story. Please share this.
And I'm like, all right, what are we doing? So he was switching companies and just not getting, he just wasn't happy. And I could see it. And it was stressful to know that your partner's not happy.
Of course.
And I'm like, you know what? The money doesn't mean anything if you're not happy. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I want to help people. I want to become a home health aide. And he did it. He made a complete pivot, went to school for it, and is now doing it, which I think is so brave.
It's
about
completely,
brave.
Completely brave.
Yeah. I'm just so
to make a life
amazed.
change like that. And, at this point too, to just say, hey, I'm done with this part of my life and I'm ready to try something new.
So you need to be in a great marriage.
Okay.
And I do not mean that everything is perfect all the time, but you need to know that you have support. You can't make a change like that.
Yeah.
And as the spouse,
Yeah.
if I said you can go for it, I can't change my mind.
Yeah.
I can't be like, ooh, that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So once I said it, I'm like, and even though there were days where I was worried, I'm like, how are we going to make, this is a big pay cut.
It's a big change.
Big change. But it always works out.
And was there a moment of that change where he ever thought, gee, am I making the right decision? Or no, was he pretty, oh, wow, that's incredible then.
He was relieved.
He knew.
Yeah.
It's so nice to hear these stories because you often hear them. People that were in corporate America for X amount, 10, 20, 30 years or whatever it was. And there's burnout that happens.
I ask him, I'm like, because his job is not easy.
Yeah.
He works with disabilities.
Yes.
And,
How does he like it?
It's challenging, but it's so rewarding, I think. And I've heard the feedback because I'm friends with one of the parents of his client.
Okay.
And her demeanor is so much calmer because she has a sense of peace.
Oh.
Because my husband is reliable, like he's such a good guy, and he's where he should be. So I feel very grateful.
Laura. That's a great story.
And interestingly enough, I'll just make this quick, but in
Go
the
ahead.
book, you'll meet, so every character about that family relationship is true, meaning his brother
Yes.
is really his half-brother, and
Okay.
2 or 3 of them are in the healthcare field, which I think is so bizarre.
Oh, you wrote that before?
Well, no, I'm just saying they became health aides, and he became
that's what I
one
mean.
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's amazing.
So
what a cool
is that
story.
genetic? I don't know.
Maybe it's kismet for sure.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things though, just in thinking about your life and all the things you shared just now.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of? And there's a lot of things to be proud of for sure, but what's something that really stands out that you'd like to share?
I think I'm most proud of the fact that when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Like my follow through. It is not easy always. Sometimes I commit myself to things that I really shouldn't have. But like I always want to be a good example to my son, to show him when you start something, you have to do what you say. And I really think, like you've pointed out, I just go for it.
Yeah.
I was raised treating people just because someone was rich or this or that. I treat everyone the same, and that's how I expect to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think when you have that attitude, you have expectations that you're going to go far.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I love that one. Follow through is important, and you could tell from all of the different things that you've done that you're certainly doing that.
thank you.
What about any mentors in your life that have helped you to become the person that you are?
I think I learn from everyone I'm with. So I really listen. I pay attention, and I ask a lot of questions. I know I'm talking a lot, but normally I listen, and it's amazing because I will say I am pretty self-critical. So I look at other people and I see every shiny thing about them, and then I look at myself, which is really not one of my best traits. But anyway, when I see something that I admire, like it's something that I'll try to do.
Okay.
So I like to be around positive people, and I like to be around doers.
Yeah.
So
It does help.
It's
motivating.
motivating.
Especially if you're a doer yourself. It's like helps you learn and lean into that skill
Absolutely.
even more. So I love that. And if you, I guess maybe you've already said it. I just thought I'd throw a fun question out there is to say, what is your superpower? If you had to think about that.
I don't sleep very much.
That's a superpower.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm thinking of things like words you may have already used, like that you are a doer, but that you're a helper. All of these different things. Maybe it's a bunch of things.
Well, yeah, I'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Is there anything else that you want to share with us today?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Yeah.
We have. Well, you have a great story, Laurie. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited to have been able to hear it and to share it with hopefully a lot of people. I hope a lot of people tune in, and I wish you much more success.
Oh, thank you. And I wish your podcast amazing success. And if anyone needs help with anything that I do, reach out.
Reach out. We've definitely put it out there, Laurie Condon author on Instagram, and please check out her new book. So thanks again, Laurie.
Thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody. Peace
Good
out.
night. Peace out.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, bookmark this podcast and follow Megan on Instagram. Okay, now for the disclaimer. This podcast is solely for educational and entertainment purposes. Megan is not a licensed therapist, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Goodbye, everybody.